In our last video, we covered the revolution of 1948 and how our young emperor was thrust into a fight to save the empire. He got a taste of the impossible choices he would have to make in the future, as well as a clear picture of how quickly war can erupt. In 1853, war erupted once more in Europe, but this time Austria didn't join the fight, not in the trenches, not on the front lines. Instead, it stood on the sidelines, nervous, indecisive, alone. And in a war it never joined, Austria would lose everything. This is road to destruction, the world wars. Today we follow Franz Joseph, not through bloodshed, but through betrayal. A war of diplomacy, fear, and isolation, and how a grateful Tsar became a bitter enemy. The revolutions were crushed, the empire had survived, but in 1853, Austria was still haunted by the fires of 1848. The provinces had gone quiet, but not because they were loyal. They were silent because they were afraid. Franz Josef's rule was absolute, but it was fragile. His empire rested on bayonets and prison walls, not on trust. And while the emperor wore his crown with pride, he knew the truth. His enemies hadn't vanished. They were just waiting. Then the Crimean War broke out. What started as a border dispute between Russia and the Ottoman Empire spiraled into something far greater. A war of empires, of alliances, of survival. Britain and France backed the Ottomans. Russia stood alone, and Austria, wedged between the West and the East, was caught in the middle. Just 4 years earlier, Franz Joseph had begged Russia for help, and Tsar Nicholas had answered. 140,000 Russian troops marched into Hungary, crushed the revolution, and saved Franz Joseph's crown. The Tsar had not asked for much in return. But now, with war on his doorstep, he expected loyalty. He wanted Austria to mobilize against the Ottomans, to repay the favor, man for man, blood for blood. But Franz Joseph hesitated. The Ottomans had not threatened Austria, and war meant risk, at home and abroad. Hungary still simmered. Italy still burned with nationalist dreams. Another war could ignite them all over again. So Austria made a choice. Not a declaration of war, but a declaration of nothing, no troops, no alliance, no aid. Austria would remain neutral. But it was a neutrality with a knife hidden behind its back, a silence that spoke volumes to both sides. In 1854, Austria moved troops to its border with Russia, not to help, but to warn. It issued an ultimatum: withdraw from the Danubian principalities, or face Austrian force. Russia, already bleeding in Crimea, had no choice. It retreated, humiliated, and for Tsar Nicholas the betrayal was complete. Austria, once a brother in monarchy, had abandoned him when he needed it most. The Tsar's words were scathing: "I saved the Habsburg throne, and they repay me with ingratitude." From that moment a crack formed, not just between monarchs but between empires. Austria had chosen diplomacy, but what it really chose was isolation. By the end of the Crimean War, Russia was defeated. France and Britain stood triumphant. And Austria? Austria was alone. Russia, its former savior, now considered it a traitor. France and Britain, who had gained the upper hand, saw Austria not as an ally, but as an opportunist. No one trusted Vienna, not the East, not the West. Franz Joseph had avoided war, but he had paid a steep price. He had destroyed his alliances and gained nothing in return. He wasn't feared like Prussia. He wasn't admired like France. He was ignored. And worse still, he had earned the quiet contempt of Europe's great powers. Austria wasn't feared. It wasn't respected. It was tolerated. And for an empire once proud, once central to European politics, that was the deepest humiliation of all. Austria had survived revolution, only to be abandoned in peace. Franz Joseph had secured his throne through Russian bayonets, and then broken the hand that had held him up. By 1856, the empire was adrift, friendless, fearful, and heading toward something far worse. Because Italy hadn't forgotten 1848, and soon the flame of Italian nationalism would rise again. Only this time, the world would not stand aside, and Austria, it would find itself dragged into a war it could not win. Next time, on Road to Destruction, the Italian Wars of Independence, Austria's humiliation in Italy. Revolution rises once more, and Franz Josef learns that some fires never die. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to make sure you don't miss it.